How do we do this? I don't remember.
Well, we did one last week, right?
Yeah.
It was funny. Somebody tweeted to me and said, Roob, I really love the National too. And I'm like, I didn't tweet about the National. And apparently we mentioned the National. That was the old daily national sports newspaper. It was so great. We had mentioned it on the pod.
Mm-hmm.
And he had just watched the pod that day. It was a new pod, and I had no memory of talking about it a month earlier when we recorded it. So anyway.
We're in the summer, but hey, training camp is 2 weeks away.
It is.
That's exciting.
Yeah, we're getting there. And it's going to be a really interesting training camp. For a team that was in a Super Bowl, there's a lot of really interesting positional battles, roster battles, and unsettled positions.
Yeah, you're right. Especially for a team like they brought a lot of the same players back, but there's still a ton of unknowns.
Yeah, I feel like there is, and it's going to make for an interesting camp.
So we decided that this whole podcast we're going to devote to position battles we're looking forward to in training camp. So we're going to just go through them position by position, kind of introduce you to some of the names, which you already know a lot of them, but then kind of break down what we think the battle is going to look like, how we think it's going to play out. And it should be a lot of fun.
I hope so.
That's always a big question. Is it fun or not? Am I just having fun? Is Roob having fun? Is anyone listening having fun?
It's always fun.
We don't know. All right, let's start off with right guard, which to me is kind of the marquee battle of training camp. Really, 2 contestants, maybe 3 involved in this. You have Cam Jurgens, who they drafted last year, basically had a redshirt season. He's going to get the first crack at this job, we believe. And then we have Tyler Steen, the young draft pick out of Alabama. Pretty talented guy, played tackle, so he's moving the guard. He's a different position too. And then I think we have to include Jack Driscoll, even though, look, he might be better suited as a backup, but he has played a ton. He's started games at right guard in the NFL before. So I think when you're talking about this position battle, those 3 guys are where you start.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to include Driscoll. I mean, he's a guy that started 16 games in the NFL at various positions and not a star, but he's played well. He's hung in there. He's tough. He's a little limited physically, but he's going to give everything he has, and certainly the most experienced out of those 3 guys. So I think it'd be a mistake to not include him. I think he's a dark horse, but it's certainly part of that battle.
Yeah, I think he would come into play if one of these, like if these other 2 guys are just not very good, it would probably be a problem if Driscoll really gets a crack at this job, because it would mean these other 2 guys aren't ready for it. But I don't think it's completely out of the realm of possibility, given that they're both changing positions. Jurgens from center to guard and Steen from tackle to guard.
Yeah, and I think there'll be days. I mean, look, let's be honest. How many days is Kelsey going to practice at training camp? 6?
I've missed a few, yeah.
So there's going to be days where Cam is at center, and maybe Tyler Steen will get all the reps, but I kind of think that Driscoll will get a fair look.
Well, I don't know, because if Kelsey's missing the day of practice,
that means Lane is as well.
Yeah,
so Driscoll will be a right tackle.
Exactly, yeah. But I am curious to see if Steen ever gets a chance at right guard without Kelsey missing a day. I mean, that's how we'll know it's a real competition, if they're rotating.
But that would also, knowing Nick, I think he wouldn't do that. I think he wouldn't want to telegraph that, maybe.
Well, at some point though, you can't be thinking, you got to just figure out who's going to play that position.
But I think there'll be enough days where Jason doesn't practice that.
Yeah, but if you're thinking that maybe Steen's the guy at right guard, you need him to get snaps next to Kels. Even in training camp, you need that.
Yeah, that's probably true. I think we'll see a lot of different combinations there. I really do think it's a 2-team race. But Driscoll's definitely a wild card in there.
Yeah. What do you think about Jurgens? We haven't really talked about him yet. I kind of think he can do it. Like watching him last year play center, and I know it's a different position, but he seemed to understand angles and leverage, and that matters. Like I don't think he has prototypical guard body. Like it's funny. He's listed around the same weight as Isaac. He different than Isaac. I don't think they're the same weight. I think Isaac's bigger than what they listed him as. And even if Jurgens shows up at 310, I think the body composition is going to be different.
Yeah, they list Isaac as 305.
I think he was the exact same as Jurgens, like 303, 305, something like that.
Yeah. I think Jurgens can handle it. It sure helps having an undersized center to kind of, who's been around the block a few times to learn from. But he doesn't have prototypical guard size, and it's, you don't want him to be the permanent guy there, but my gut instinct is he can handle it. But I do think there'll be a competition there, and I think it would be a mistake to count out Tyler Steen because he's a pretty good prospect and he's a pretty good player. I like Jurgens' attitude. I like his confidence. I like the fact that when he did go in and play last year, he just kind of, went in there and did the job, and there was no hesitation, and he was fine. I'm a believer. I'm buying in.
Yeah, I think like long term, Steen is probably a better guard prospect than Jurgens, but that 1 year head start is a big deal. And I think in their minds, they're thinking, all right, Cam is the right guard in year one. If Kelsey leaves, we slide him in the center, and there goes Steen at right guard. I think that's like what they're envisioning in a perfect world.
Yeah, and you think how important having this.
They win the Super Bowl and Kelsey rides off into the sunset. That's like their perfect plan, right?
Yeah, I mean the whole Kelsey thing and not knowing when or if he'll ever retire is it makes it a little difficult. All this stuff. You go into every year think, well, this will be his last year, and then they do this and do that. But who knows?
I predict that one day he will retire.
I predict he won't.
How about this position battle, though? Who do you think is – we can't predict too far in the future, but assuming health, who is the week one starter?
I think it'll be Cam Jurgens at right guard, ultimately.
I do too.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to running back. And running back is an interesting one because Miles Sanders is no longer here, and the Eagles were very clear this time last year that he's our number one back. And when there was any discussion about him taking second-team reps, even though that did indeed happen at a full practice, they were very clear. He is the top running back.
He loved that story, too. He was really excited about that one.
It's not that clear this year. I don't know who you could say the top running back is.
No, and you can make a case for Gainwell the way he finished last year in the playoffs. You can make a case for Penny just because his elite explosiveness and I mean the numbers are just there's very few. I think Jamal Charles is the only running back with a higher career average than Penny, and you can make a case for Swift just because his body of work and he's played the most out of those three guys. So you can make a case for any of those guys. That's what makes this such an intriguing position battle. I think they're all going to play. I think even, I think they're all going to play. I think they're all going to play a lot. I think it'll be a real three-headed monster, which makes sense because, Gainwell hasn't had injuries, but he's also younger. But the other two guys, you go into it thinking we got to try to keep them healthy as well as get the most out of them while still being careful with them. Obviously, Penny more than Swift, but Swift's had a few.
Not quite to the extent of Penny.
He's averaged like 50 carries a year in his career, which is crazy. What's crazy is he has the fourth most 40-yard runs in football over the last 4 years and like the 61st most carries. It's crazy. But I think who starts the season, like 1st and 10, first drive of the year, might depend as much on like down and distance and what the defense is doing and what the first play is than who had the best camp. Mm-hmm. I think it's going to be situational, which makes it so when you say who's going to be the starter, it could be anybody, but you look at who's going to have the most carries for the season and that kind of thing. I would say probably Swift.
Yeah, when you're talking like overall touches, I think Swift is probably the safest bet because of his ability as a receiver, which, look, they haven't used a ton of. here in Philadelphia, but he brings that element, which Gainwell does to a certain extent, but he doesn't have the numbers and the experience of doing it that Swift has.
I mean, he caught 30 some odd passes last year and really limited playing time.
Yeah.
But he can catch the ball.
He can, but Swift has 156 in 3 years. So
right.
Yeah. It's fascinating. I really do think training camp matters for this position. Because I think they really do want to ride the hot hand. And I think that starts in camp. Like, I don't think that's just like week one, they have a plan, and then whoever gets hot, then they'll ride them. Like, if one guy looks better in training camp, I think he has a chance to carve out a bigger role for himself.
That's a good theory. I mean, they're all, yeah, I think there'll be something to that, but I also think unless one of them is really bad or is banged up or has fumbling issues or some red flag, I think they're all going to play.
Mm-hmm. Now, will they have, because you don't want to be too predictable either.
Right.
So, like, it's nice to say, like, well, here's the third down back, or here, this is what we want this guy to do, and this, but you can't just do that. And we've also seen this team use tempo. So you kind of have to have everyone being able to do everything. Obviously, they have strengths and weaknesses, but I wonder how much thought's going to go into that part of it. Like, we can't be overly predictable with how we use these backs.
No, that's true. And I think Penny can probably catch the ball enough. I mean, he's got 30 catches. I mean, he's played so little. That's probably a lot. I think they are going to see him all as interchangeable and multiple. And we know Gainwell and Swift can catch the ball and run the ball. And yeah, look, they're not going to be predictable. I mean, that's one thing. That's one thing about Shane Steichen offense. They were so well scouted and self-scouted. You never saw any trends. You never saw any tells based on, formation and who's on the field.
I want to give Nick credit for that too, because that's a self-study. That's not just play calling.
No, that's absolutely correct. So we'll see. I would expect that to continue. I think these guys can all play. They can all do enough things that you can use any of them on any down and distance. Let me ask you about I don't know if it's possible to have all four dressed. Probably not, but I love Boston Scott at the goal line and short yardage too.
And let me ask you about Trey Sermon real quick. Any chance he can make this roster?
Yeah.
Can he beat out Boston Scott? We love Boston.
I think there's a chance, but I think Penny would have to be hurt or someone would have to be hurt.
So you don't think he can just beat out Boston and win the fourth job?
I really don't. I think Boston has such a valuable skill set at the goal line and short yardage. I mean, he's almost unstoppable. His numbers at the goal line, like from the 5 in, I mean, he scores like 80% of his carries.
Yeah. And
those are tough yards. When you have like third and goal on the 4-yard line, I mean, that's like, but he's got that great leverage. He's got great vision. I mean, all we know about Trey Sermon is he was a pretty high draft pick and they liked him enough to keep him around last year, but that was before they had these two other veterans. So I'd be surprised if he makes it unless somebody's hurt.
Give me one name who has the most touches.
If I was calling the plays, it would be Gainwell, but I think it'll be Swift.
Yeah, I think it'll be Swift too.
Yeah. But, I mean, look, honestly, we don't know how good Gainwell is. I mean, if it wasn't for that Giants game, he was okay in the Niners game, but the Giants game is really what everything's based on. That was his game. Like 12 for 112 or something. It's crazy.
Yeah.
14 for 112. But I think Swift is like you said, the safe bet. Just because his receiving ability, I mean, he's going to be on the field in all situations. He's been relatively healthy. I mean, he plays 12, 13 games. Mm-hmm. He's never had a huge workload. They never, I'm sure that drove Deuce crazy, but I would go, you would agree?
Yeah, I would agree. Catch all the sports action and more at Rivers Casino Philadelphia. Whether it's the money line or the pass line, there's something for everyone in a great sports book. Rivers Casino Philadelphia. Philly loves a winner. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, Roob, let's move on now to the next position battle, the third wide receiver. The Eagles are in a pretty good spot with the top two, maybe the best spot in the league with their top two. You can argue they're not, but I think you could argue they are as well. After that,
it's the Dolphins or the Eagles.
Yeah, maybe the Bengals too. Throw the Bengals in there. Yeah. But anyway, the third receiver is a question.
It's a question. I get it.
Yeah.
That was intentional, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't. I've used it before though, so I can't.
Yeah. And I think it's Quez's job to lose, but I think he will lose it unless he has a really special training camp, really impressive training camp. I think that last year, look, I think Nick's excuse me. I think Nick's doing the right thing by saying, moving on, we're going to forget last year. It's a new season. He's going to have every opportunity. I think that's the right thing to do. But if he keeps making the same mistakes he made during the season last year, the drops, not being strong to the ball, fumbles, then it's got to be Zacchaeus.
Yeah, it is it's interesting to me because Quez, when he's at his best, I think is probably a better player than Zacchaeus. But we've seen those mistakes, the drops, the not strong to the ball, like you said, not finishing routes. We've even seen that in practice, like sometimes they just won't finish a route. What are you doing? And it's just like these momentary lapses. I think Quez at his best is their best option.
Yeah, I would agree. They're kind of opposite players. I mean, Zacchaeus had no drops last year. He doesn't have the explosion that Quez is going to give you, although he can run. He's
got some deep. And you know what's crazy to me? Like he has such a slot receiver body. He played a ton outside last year, almost as much as he played in the slot.
Yeah, it was about the same. Yeah, so I think he's a good option, and I think even if Quez is the three, I think there will be spots they can use Zacchaeus. There's only one ball, as we've learned, and you're going to throw to the backs.
What if they added another ball?
That would be fun. There's only two balls.
I think if you added another ball to most sports, it would be kind of fun to watch. Like soccer. Throw another ball out there.
You know what I would do to improve soccer? I'd get rid of the goalie.
How does that get it? Makes it better?
Yeah, it would be a little higher scoring.
Okay. All right. I'd throw another ball out there.
We could do like how to improve every sport.
People are going to hate that when they hear that.
Yeah. Well, it's not like, soccer fans are like real defensive about their sport or anything. I actually love soccer.
We'll throw another hockey puck out there too. We'll get the hockey fans on it. Anyway.
Get rid of the blue line. That would help hockey. We can improve every sport. All right. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen there. I kind of agree with you. I think Quez is the leader in the clubhouse. We haven't talked about this in a while. What did you make of Nick Sirianni singling Quez out when he was asked about who was having a really good spring? It was intentional, but why?
I think they're trying to boost his confidence.
Any chance they're trying to trade him still?
Yeah, and I think that was the first thing I think I said.
I'd say still. I don't know if they were ever trying to trade him.
Yeah, I think that's certainly. I think I wrote that day. It was kind of seemed that way. But I think he's got. I mean, if he's the Quez that we saw 2 years ago, he's got value to them. I'm not sure how much you could get for Quez Watkins in a trade. So I think it would behoove them to try to get him in a mental place where he can make the plays that he's capable of making. It was so out of character when he did that. It was just, I think he even made references. I know I never single out guys, but so it was kind of transparent, but
I kind of agree. I think he knows the heat that's been on Quez. He knows that Quez knows the heat that's been on him, and he wanted to give him a vote of confidence. Because we've seen Quez's Twitter account. Like he knows what's being said about him, and it's just a matter of whether or not he's able to channel that in a productive way, or if it becomes a negative thing. And it can go either way. Like we've seen players read and get them out of their game, and we've seen players kind of lock in because of this. I don't know which way he's going to go. I was impressed at the end of the year, though, just talking to him after the season. Just he admitted that he wasn't very good. He also said he was injured for a part of that season, which was maybe an excuse. But if that's true, then sure. I mean, you got to play through it, but that can play a role. I think he's going to be their third receiver this year.
I do too. And if he's not, they have a pretty good option.
Yeah, I like. It's interesting though, with Zacchaeus, because last year their fourth receiver was so different. It was Zach Pascal, who's basically a blocking receiver. Obviously, Olamide is not that. Will he have a different role? Like, will they have a carved out role for him as the fourth receiver?
It's a good question. Too early to know. See what he can do in camp. That won't be his role, but yeah. But when you get down to it, if AJ and Devontae and Goddard are the top three options, Swift and Quez. Now you're talking about the fourth and fifth options. Olamide at best is a sixth option. If we're saying Quez is WR3, so not a lot of balls going his way.
Yeah, and the problem with the theoretical Quez Watkins trade is that they're not super deep at receiver. Their fifth receiver right now is Britton Covey, who, he's really a special teamer at this point. Really, only a punt returner.
Caught the ball pretty well in minicamp.
Yeah. After that, there's a few guys who are interesting.
Greg Ward's still here.
Yeah, you have Greg Ward. You have Joseph Ngata. You have Charleston Rambo. Jaden Hazelwood. Yeah. I wasn't going to leave out Hazelwood.
No, you can't.
He was once like a really high school recruit. He was like one of the top receivers in the country coming out of high school.
He's got great size.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Some intriguing guys to watch in camp, but probably unlikely to really be factors this year.
Yeah, it's tough for those guys.
Okay. My next position battle on the list here, third string quarterback. And I know people are going to roll their eyes and say, who the heck cares about the third string quarterback? Well, the third string quarterback was a backup in two pretty important games in December last year. So,
and look up how many times the Eagles threes had to play in high leverage games, high leverage situations.
Yeah. In 2017, we were one Nick Foles scrape away from seeing Nate Sudfeld in the Super Bowl. So the third string quarterback does matter.
And some people were rooting for that after that. What was it, Dallas game or whatever it was?
Yeah. Jeff Lurie maybe was one of them. He always talks up that Nate Sudfeld game.
19 for 23.
So we have in one corner Ian Book, in the other Tanner McKee. Good thing it's not a boxing match. McKee would have him with a much longer reach. Ian Book's 6 foot. McKee is 6'5", 6'6".
Yeah.
That's what's going to kind of be comical in training camp, watching these two guys throw back to back. I wouldn't just give this to Tanner McKee because they drafted him.
I would.
Would you?
Yeah, I think he's going to be the 3. I mean, I like Ian and he's a very smart kid. He's just so physically limited with his height and his size. He's going to be a coach. He might be a coach this year.
Yeah, I mean, he was a 4th round pick.
He was. No, that's fair. But when I just think this, when you look at Tanner McKee's size and the fact that he's their guy, I don't know if it's a lock. And I mean, Ian Book can spin it pretty good. I mean, he can throw. We've seen it. He's got a good arm. He's accurate.
We haven't seen a lot of it. He wasn't here in training camp last year.
No, but we've seen him in just individual and stuff. I mean, he can throw. He can throw the ball. But when I look at Tanner McKee, the fact that they took him in the 6th round, his size, quarterback factory, kind of put it all together. I'd be surprised if Ian Book is in the mix coming out of camp.
They keep 3 on the roster?
Yeah.
Especially with the new rule?
Yeah.
Yeah. It'll be Tanner?
I think so.
You think they would try to get Ian Book to the practice squad then?
Sure. Why not?
Yeah. No reason not to, I guess.
No reason not to. You can keep like 40 guys on the practice squad now. And there's no rules.
16, 17 with a Matt Leo.
That's right. Yeah, no reason not to. And I think he's a good guy to have around just because he knows the offense. He's so smart. Um, I think the guys respect him. I know Jalen really likes Ian, thinks a lot of him. You see them chatting all the time. And so I think he's a good guy to have around. I just don't think he's going to be the 3.
Yeah. Is it more important this year, too, to have a third string quarterback? Because you have, like, Mariota's had some injuries in his career. Like, if you're in a long stretch, like, knock on wood here for Jalen, but if he gets hurt and you're down to your backup, but your backup's had injury problems.
Yeah, but I'm not sure. I mean, if you get to the point where Mariota plays enough that he gets hurt, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. That's probably true.
Yeah. So I'll go Tanner McKee.
Yeah. Do you think? All right. Since you're going Tanner McKee, I'll ask you one more about him. The chances Tanner McKee, going in the future here, is the backup in 2024, because that would be like the ultimate goal if you can get a really cheap backup behind your $255 million starter.
I think there's a chance. I haven't seen enough of him to really. I mean, I'm sure they want that. Because backup quarterback, you want a guy that you can really rely on to go in there and win a couple games, but ideally you don't want a guy that you're spending a fortune on. So a relative fortune, not compared to Jalen, but compared to other backups. So I think that would be the ideal. And you don't want to keep changing backups every year either. And Mariota is going to want to start somewhere. He's going to look for that opportunity, I would think.
I don't know if that's going to come.
No, I don't either, but he's going to want it. He's going to look for it.
Yeah.
So I think ideally you want your guy to be the number 2 next year, but he's got a long way to go before we get there.
All right, we'll be back on the other side with safety and cornerback. All right, we're back. Let's go to safety, Roob, one of the more intriguing positions on this roster. The way I look at it, I think there are really 3 guys fighting for 2 spots. You agree with that?
No.
Okay.
I think there's 2 guys fighting for 1 spot.
Oh, so you have Reed Blankenship as a starter no matter what.
I do.
Okay, so
I do.
Let me
I've
go
seen
through the 3 guys.
Him.
You have Reed Blankenship, Terrell Edmonds, and Sidney Brown, the rookie. So you think Blankenship is a starter, and now it comes down to Edmonds or Sidney Brown.
Right.
Okay. That kind of fits from a positional standpoint. I think Reed is probably better as the post safety, and we've seen Edmonds play a ton close to the line of scrimmage. And Sidney Brown, we've seen it. Like, they say he can play in the post, and he did it at times in Illinois, but like last year he was pretty much in the box the whole time. So maybe they're a little redundant, Edmonds and Sidney Brown.
Yeah. Which it's all ironic because, I mean, the whole thing with Blankenship was that he was a box safety coming out, but I thought he really held his own in coverage last year and showed he can – look, he doesn't have ideal speed, but I think he makes up for it with how smart he is. He could play deep safety.
Yeah, I think we've underrated Edmonds a little bit.
That's possible.
As a collective. Like, I don't think he's a Pro Bowl or he's not like a star safety, but he's been a pretty functional player in his career. He's not old. I think there's a really good chance he holds off Sidney Brown longer than people are expecting.
It's certainly possible, and I think that it has more to do with Sidney than Edmonds. But yeah, I mean, he's a solid guy. He started 75 games, and he's 26. So he's a guy who's got a ton of experience. He's not a star, but he's a solid guy, and Sidney's going to have to outplay him. And that's not going to be easy.
Take a while. That's what made Blankenship so impressive. Like, it can take a while for safeties to play well in this league. Yeah,
there's no question. And I'm just not used to seeing you drink out of a plastic cup. Or
I'm at my parents' shore house. The plastic everywhere. They have like these old like they have the gas station coffee mug, like those big. I was drinking out of one of them this morning. It's like a blast in the past every time I'm here.
Yeah, whenever you go to the parents' place, it's always like plastic cups and kitschy, all that kitschy stuff. But yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I think Sidney's going to have to be very good to win that job. But I think they would love to see him make a run at it. Sure. Obviously, you want the guy that you have for 4 years or 5 years to beat out the guy you have for 1 year. You want the draft pick to play, but if he's not at that level, it'll be Edmonds.
Yeah, I could also see Edmonds you kind of defer to the veteran, so he's out there at the beginning of camp, and if he just plays well, could Sidney Brown become this year's Nakobe Dean? Where the guys in front of him are just you start them there because they're older veterans and then they're playing well, and you say, well.
Or does Terrell Edmonds become this year's Anthony Harris?
Well, Anthony Harris did start for an entire season, though.
Yeah, but I mean, the 2022 Anthony Harris, where he goes from one to not being on the team to be on the practice squad to leave and to coming back to leave. But I think Edmonds is most likely the starter. But I'm going to say Sidney just because I don't know. I think
you're really selling it.
He's certainly got the one thing you worry about with Sidney Brown is tackling. He hasn't been a great tackler. He's physical. We know that. Look, it'll probably be Edmonds. I should probably stick to that, but I think it's natural to root for the young kid and want to see him do well. But yeah, he's going to have to play really well to beat out Edmonds.
Yeah, and look, I think there are going to be situations where they'll have three on the field.
That's a big question. Without knowing,
especially when you look at the linebackers and go, well, would you rather have Terrell Edmonds and Sidney Brown or Nick Morrow out there?
Yeah, it's so true, and we don't really know anything about Sean Desai's defense, so it's hard to tell what he's got in mind. But
some three safety in Chicago for that year.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's personnel driven too. But we don't know how he feels about Sidney. He's one guy I'm really curious about how he's going to hold up in camp and how he's going to look and how comfortable he'll be and what kind of playmaker he is. Can't wait to see him.
Yeah. How about after that, Kayvon Wallace, Justin Evans? I thought Kayvon played pretty well last year. Do you think
he played well in difficult?
Yeah.
I mean, he wouldn't play for a month, and then you get a high leverage rep, and do well with it, and then he'd be back on the bench. Then he'd come out and play series. I thought he handled it well, and there's a spot on my roster for him.
I think so too. I think Justin Evans might be on the outside looking in, even though they just signed him to a free agent deal. Not much guaranteed money. And I know they like Justin Evans. They were looking at Justin Evans last year, but they're probably not keeping five safeties.
No.
So, I don't know if he has a spot right now.
No. And again, Kayvon's got to have a good camp. Evans is 27? Mm-hmm. He started 25 games. Yeah. I mean, obviously he missed all that time.
High draft pick.
Yeah, 6 years ago. Yeah, he was a 2.
Yeah.
Middle of the second round. Interesting guy.
Yeah, so that's like another layer to the safety battle is those two guys might be fighting for a job.
Justin Evans went to Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College. You know who else went there? One-time Eagles head coach Ed Kayat.
Okay.
Where is Mississippi Gulf Coast?
Mississippi.
What town's it in? You know this stuff.
I don't know, actually.
It's in Perkinston, Mississippi.
Okay.
What do you think the population of Perkinston is?
I'll guess 40,000.
I'm going to say 19,000. Let's see.
Yeah.
Population. Oh, 40,000. Oh, no, that's the zip code.
Oh, I thought I nailed it.
39 is the zip code's 39 something. This doesn't have the population. Wikipedia doesn't have population. How's that possible? All right. Anyway, we should probably move on.
Yeah, I'll move on to cornerback. You keep looking up that population.
It's an unincorporated community. That's why there's no population.
Okay.
I'll find it though.
Well, if they get incorporated, let me know.
8,891.
Oh, okay. Pretty small. But they're not really counting out there, so.
What are you saying about disparaging the good people of Perkinston?
Anyway. I hope you're not listening. Cornerback. Look, we know the top cornerbacks on this roster are Darius Slay, James Bradbury, Avonte Maddox. After that, there are questions. I think they have some talent, but it's a lot of guys fighting for 2, maybe 3 roster spots.
Yeah, it seems like that's usually the case. This team loves bringing like 15 corners to camp and letting it all sort out.
It was one of the more fun battles last year. Josh Jobe came out of nowhere and won a roster spot.
And he's a guy who I think is in the mix this year. Obviously, Ringo will be here.
Yeah. Want me to go through the names I have in front of me?
Yeah.
So it's Zach McPherson, Josh Jobe, Keely Ringo, Greedy Williams, Josiah Scott, and then if you want to throw Mario Goodrich, Eli Ricks, Mekhi Gardner, like there's a bunch of names.
Garner, not Gardner. It's Garner.
Isn't that what I said?
You said Gardner. Like Barry Gardner.
I thought I said Garner.
This Barry Gardner, he's playing. He's doing a nice job.
I thought I said Garner.
Anyway, we'll look at the film.
I think you're correcting me on things I haven't messed up, and there's enough to correct me on the things I have messed up. So
that is true.
I'll take offense to it.
There's some talented kids. They really seem to like Job a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot to like about him. Now he did have some injuries last year. That's a little bit of a concern and limited playing time. I still like Zach McPherson. I think he's valuable. I think he might be the backup nickel this year.
Yeah, and I'm still not sure whether he was playing nickel just because they had so many outside corners or because they genuinely like him as a potential nickel.
There's only one guy of the players I listed that I know is going to be on the roster, and that's Keely Ringo. They just traded a 3rd-round pick to draft him in the 4th round, so he's going to be on the roster. The other ones, like Greedy Williams is not a lock. McPherson isn't a lock.
Who do you think's most likely after that initial group of 3 guys?
Well, Keely.
Well, not including Maddox. Okay, so those 3 guys plus Keely, but
yeah. I still think Zach McPherson is going to be.
Yeah, I do too.
Okay,
I do too.
And I think they could keep 6, and in that case, maybe Greedy Williams.
Yeah, I mean, it might come down to Joe versus Williams. If they really believe McPherson could be the slot, if they don't, now you're looking at Josiah or, who knows?
Yeah.
Behind Avonte.
I don't know if it'll be Josiah based on them not playing him late in the year,
Yeah.
What else? So if it could, like Ricks might, or not Ricks, Ringo might matter too, like how well he plays, because if he plays well enough for them to feel like he could be a legitimate backup option immediately, then maybe Greedy Williams isn't as important.
Yeah, that's a fair way to look at it. I think with all those, he's another 1-year contract guy. I think with all those 1-year contract guys, you have to look at that.
Like 600 guaranteed.
They all have small guarantees. They're all 1-year guys. They're all guys Eagles have no commitment to. And they're guys, if they play well, they'll be here. But if there's any question at all, they're going to go with the young guy if it's close at all over the 1-year contract veteran.
Sure, and they should. I mean, that's smart to do it that way. All right, we will be back on the other side. We have linebacker and my favorite punter still to go. All right, we're back. Linebacker is
the funny thing is, it really is your favorite. He's not just saying that.
Yeah, I love the punters. Punter battles are fun. Linebacker first, though. We'll save the best for last. Nakobe Dean's probably going to be a starter. Like, we feel pretty confident.
He better be
about that. After that, I mean, Nick Morrow is in line to be a starter. They signed him with no guaranteed money. I still think this is a position where they're not finished, and they'll look to add. But for now, like, we're going on what they have in front of them, and there's not a ton right there.
No, and we're talking off-ball linebacker. The intriguing guy for me is Christian Ellis, and we've talked about him a lot because he's the greatest playmaker in OTA or in minicamp history. But he also gives you something that those other guys don't have, and that's size. I'm guessing he's 242 to 245. They list him at like the same as Nakobe, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, he's not 230.
He's not 230. He's in the 240s. And they don't have I mean, Morrow's small too. They don't have size at linebacker, and that's a concern for me. So Ellis is a guy I think is going to get a good look. I'm not sure they really feel Sean Bradley is more than a special teamer. Davion Taylor's still in the mix. He was once a pretty high pick. He was a 3 in 2020. I wrote about a guy in my 10 observations, Ben Van Sumeren, who is kind of intriguing, probably a practice squad dude. But there's not a lot to choose from here. There's the guys. I mean, other than every one of them is a question mark. I mean, every single off-ball linebacker they have is a question mark. That's why I think you're right that they're not done. But even if they bring someone in at this point, he's going to be a question mark most likely as well, because it'll be somebody that another team didn't want.
Yeah, I mean, last year the Saints didn't want C.J. Gardner-Johnson by that theory. Like, that's not
right
necessarily an indicator. Like, I think they can get talent. What do you make of Davion Taylor at this point?
It's hard to tell. We've talked about how that, when he won a starting job, he played okay before he got hurt. I think it was 6 starts.
Mm-hmm.
But since then, it just hasn't happened for him. So I'm sure they would love to see him take ownership of a roster spot. And he's been around a long time. He's a confident kid. We know that. He's got some ability. He's very athletic. And, he's played more than any other linebacker on the team.
Not Morrow.
Here. He's played here.
Oh, here. Yeah,
not Morrow. But I would give him every opportunity to show what he can do at this point. I mean, it's not ideal. I mean, they just don't have. Morrow started 46 games with the Raiders and Bears. And he's got obviously that Sean Desai connection. I don't know. There's a lot of unknowns there. But a guy like Davion, who has some ability, I'll take a look and see how he fits in.
Yeah. Morrow had played for the Bears, but after.
Yeah, you're right. 2 years. Yeah. It was just last year.
I don't know how it's going to shake out. I think when we see camp start, it'll be Dean and Morrow out there. I think we might see them mix in Ellis a little bit. I think he's earned that, honestly, based on what we saw in 2 practices at OTAs, which isn't a ton, but make plays.
And starting,
you know what? We haven't talked about Nakobe Dean because, we know he's going to be a starter. It's not really a battle. I want to see if he makes some splash plays at training camp. He was quiet in his rookie training camp, and it was part of the reason I think they just went with T.J. Edwards and Kaiser White. And that's not a knock. He can be quiet, but I expected more splash plays, and we didn't really see it from him.
I think that's fair, and you're right, because he came in with so much hype from Georgia that you kind of thought he would show up more. He wasn't bad.
No, there weren't mistakes.
Yeah, but he didn't really shine. So that's I'm certainly. And, we talk about him like he's all right, well, they got 1 star. We don't know. We don't know how good he's going to be. And, honestly, he didn't make the impact on special teams I expected either. I thought he'd be more he embraced it and he played hard, but you didn't really see him, making huge plays. So I don't know what they have in him. I think he'll be okay, but I don't know that.
Okay. We move on?
Yeah. Here we go.
The punter battle. Aaron Siposs versus Ty Zentner. I still think this is going to be Aaron Siposs.
Well, we saw Ty Zentner practice. Is that why you're saying that?
Even before then, honestly. I like that they brought in some competition for Siposs. I thought it was pretty weird, honestly, last year that they just ran it back with him without putting any kind of pressure on him. And he did get slightly better, but he's still, let's be honest, he's still at the bottom of the league or the bottom third of the league in most major categories. And we don't even have to talk about Super Bowl anymore. We know what happened with that punt, but I think can you get by with Aaron Siposs? Yeah, they did last year. I think the problem might be they just don't value special teams enough right now to put resources into it. And that's why, like, yeah, they brought in competition, but is it a guy who's really going to have a chance to win the job? I don't know that.
Let me ask you this. Are you surprised Michael Clay's still here?
No. It's tough to move on from a coach after a Super Bowl run. Right or wrong, I understand your point. Their special teams have been underwhelming. They got better in the second half last year, certainly. They set the bar pretty low, but they did get better. Maybe they're looking at that and they're feeling okay about it. And the other thing is, like, if you're not sinking resources into it, how many years in this city did we have like special teams guys, like real special teams guys, like Brian Brayman and Chris Maragos, and like returners like Darren Sproul? Like, we had guys in the city that was their job, was special teams, and the team put resources into it. And they just haven't done that in recent years.
Yeah, that's true. I don't think it's really the personnel that's the problem, or it might not the whole problem. Have just not been impressed by Michael Clay and the product he puts on the field. I think he can do better. But we'll see. I'm going to go Zentner just because I just can't imagine another year with Aaron Sipos.
I don't think you're going to have to imagine it.
Yeah, you're probably right, but I'm going to go Zentner.
Okay. I hope it plays out that way, and we get to watch because if it plays out that way, it will have been a really fun punter battle in training camp.
Can Matt Leo punt? All those Australian guys are pretty good punters.
Jordan?
I bet Jordan
could punt. I don't think there's anything Jordan can't do.
By the way, congrats to Jordan. He just got married.
Yeah, he's singing at his own wedding.
How about that?
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
He's a really good singer.
He is.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
The last thing I had here, and this is just because one guy on Twitter asked me to do it. I have a few photos from my trip.
Okay.
So a little slideshow. This is of interest to one guy on Twitter, so I apologize.
No, these photos are great. I looked at all.
I had fun. So this one is.
You got to understand, when Dave goes on a trip, he posts like 3,000 photos on Facebook.
I do. I like to take photos. This was a waterfall in British Columbia.
You sure that's not the waterfall we saw in Minneapolis?
It looks like it a little bit. Some pretty crazy water in the rivers there.
Wow.
We stayed in a like not a houseboat, but like a house on water in a dock, and this was our view.
Nice.
Pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Went on a little whale watching tour. Got to see our buddy.
That's not a whale, Dave.
That's not a whale. We saw other stuff. We saw this guy.
Oh, wow.
Sea lions hanging out. Here's the whale. There he is. And then after that, I went to Olympic National Park in Washington. My first time there. So I didn't get to see all of the park, but I got to see a bunch of it. Like, the beaches there are just really cool. Got to climb around on some of those rocks for a little bit. Got to get out in the water. This is Crescent Lake. This was cool. This was our last day. We kayaked on Crescent Lake, and then we climbed the mountain that you're looking at right ahead of us, and got this view of the lake. One of the deepest lakes in the country. It goes, I think, 624 feet.
Now, what did you do with the kayaks while you were climbing the mountain?
We just rented them for like 4 hours and returned them to the hotel there.
Okay.
Before we climbed.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
Yeah.
Beautiful stuff.
Yeah, it was fun. Enjoying your summer? I hope everyone else is enjoying their summers.
Yeah, I got one more thing I want to throw out. 3 names: Nia Ali from Pleasantville, Josh Owatunde from Franklinville, Delsey High School, and Curtis Thompson from Florence. 3 South Jersey athletes made the U.S. World Championships track team this weekend in Eugene. Curtis won his 3rd javelin national title, which is the 3rd most of any javelin thrower in the last 75 years.
Wow. And
Nia won her first. She's an Olympian, an Olympic silver medalist. It was her first U.S. title. She's 34, has 3 kids, and won the U.S. title in the hurdles, which is really cool. And Josh Owatunde from Delsey was 2nd in the shot put. He beat the number 2 seed and made his 2nd straight World Championships team. So really good stuff. And Devin Allen got hurt running the first round and scratched from the semifinals. So something to keep an eye on as camp comes. Looked like he hurt his calf.
Yeah, I hope he's okay for training camp.
Yeah, he better be, because he's a long shot healthy. So be interesting, something to keep an eye on when camp comes.
This has been Roob's Track Corner. You got anything else here? We wrap this one up.
No, it's good stuff.
Yeah. All right. We'll talk to everyone soon. That's it for Roob. I'm Dave. This has been Eagle Eye. Take care, everyone.